Our sixth question comes from Ian Doig, who I believe is the chair of Merchiston Community Council. I mention that fact because it is relevant to the question that he asks, which is this: stronger community councils require greater devolution of authority and resources from Scottish Government and from local authorities. How do you intend to devolve power down to strengthen the role and voice of community councils and make sure that they are listened to? And I'm going to ask Miles to take this question first. Miles.
Thanks, John, and thank you, Ian, for that question. It sounds like you've got a vested interest, but it's a vital thing, and it's something which I don't think we're respecting community councils enough as a country. And part of that problem is the centralising of so much by the Scottish Government. And I think we need a real discussion over where we're going to devolve policies down, not just to our local authorities, but to local communities, and some of the opportunities which that presents for budgets to be actually allocated as well, to have community improvement partnerships in place. Now, one of the biggest issues most candidates at this election will be getting when we're now finally knocking on doors is the number of potholes, and people are complaining about that to me every single day. It kind of feels like deja vu when you're doing this at every single election, but so much of that work isn't being prioritised. And when I know local community councils have raised these concerns, they've been ignored by the local authority and often played off one another. So I think we need to see opportunities to devolve power, not just to local authorities, but to community councils. And that starts with a proper budget being available, and to try to make our local authorities elections more accessible for the public to take part, and to potentially start being more involved as well. I think that would make a big difference.
Thank you very much, Miles. Alison, your thoughts on devolving power down?
Yeah, this is a great question, Ian. I think we'll know that we've succeeded here when we're having hustings to get onto your local community council. When I was a local councillor in Edinburgh, I'd go along to some meetings and there was always this vexed question, oh, what can we do to get young people to engage, or, you know, just generally to get a broader cross-section that was more representative of the community? Well, I think one of the ways we do that is by really empowering our community councils, and that does involve giving them a meaningful amount of cash. Now, I'm just going to, you know, pluck £500,000 figure out of the air. And can you imagine if your local community council was able to spend that on what mattered most to Gorgie and Dalry? I think you'd have so much buy-in and interest that it would be transformative. I also happen to firmly believe that local people know what they need most. You know, is it a new 3G pitch? Is it a youth club? Is it somewhere to hang out and play table tennis? You know, they know what they need most, whereas we've had some pilot projects in the city, but very often it was a limited budget and you could only decide that you wanted to spend it on this road project or some sort of narrow focus. So I think we need to, you know, my party supports independence. The last thing I would support is a mini Westminster. I'd like a brave national parliament that was willing to share its power with local authorities, and then I'd like those local authorities, and ours aren't very local compared to most of Europe, by the way, they're huge, to have the ambition and trust in people to disseminate that power further. So I'm all in favour of subsidiarity and, you know, decisions being taken at the most local level possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alison. Fred, your thoughts?
Yeah, so many years ago, it is a long time ago, I was the chair of the South Edinburgh Local Development Committee, which was the area committee of the council that existed in the run up to 2007. And we worked with the community councils and we spent money locally. But I think the thing that I'd say to Alison is that you can't imagine giving community councils the resources they need to make these sort of decisions while we have the financial state that our councils as a whole are in after this last 5 years, when budgets have been put through by the SNP, supported, I think, in almost every occasion by the Greens, that have had the effect of reducing council budgets faster than any changes to the Scottish Government's budget. And local government needs to be treated with respect by the Scottish Government, and it frankly isn't. Now, there's a specific policy in the Liberal Democrat Manifesto, which I actually wrote many years ago, that we would allow communities, and in many cases would be community councils around Scotland, if they could build a case to become borough councils or island councils again. Now, it might not be appropriate in cities. I don't know what Leith would think. They might have a better idea, but it's really targeted on the small towns of Scotland that feel entirely abandoned by their large local authorities and by the Scottish government, that could well create an argument for specific bespoke local powers. And so I don't know whether that applies to Merchiston. There's an interesting debate to be had, but I think we should give community councils the opportunity to become powerful and capable local bodies that are making a real difference in their communities beyond what they already do.
Thank you very much, Fred. Daniel, what do you make of community councils?
Well, I'm tempted just to go with the crude outbidding of Alison and say, well, if she's going to give them $500 million, I'll give them $1 million. But look, I think she's basically right in that in order for community councils to have more power, they need to have budget and they need to have control. And likewise, I mean, I'd agree with Fred. I think that there needs to be a framework whereby they can sort of almost, claim those powers. But I think there's a broader point here. And let me make two broad points. If I'm going to make a criticism of my party, we have been the party of devolution, but I don't think we've necessarily lived and breathed that. I want us to be much more passionate about devolution in every sense of that word. Devolution isn't just about creating a parliament in Edinburgh. It needs to be about pushing power down as close to people as possible. But the other thing is, I mean, our councils currently are both too big and too small. I think we need to have effective local councils that control local matters, but we also probably need to have regional local government as well. And that's a much bigger topic.
Thank you, Daniel. Angus.
Well, good to follow on from Daniel's reply there, because there's much in what he said that I agree with, because I think over the passage of time, powers move. They're centralized, they're decentralized, and I think it is worthwhile considering where the balance of powers lies. That's one of the reasons why I'm really enthused by the prospect of actually having a constitution in our country, and we can have a debate that involves the public in framing that constitution, and where it is suggested that there should be more power exercised closer to the people, I'm instantly attracted to that. If you look at other Northern European countries, they have much smaller local government, but much more of them. But that then raises the issue that Daniel brought up of not then perhaps having large enough forms of regional government to make more strategic decisions. So there's not a simple fix to this, but I am committed to the conversation. I am committed to further constitutional change, not just Scotland's independence, but also at a community level. And as I started this evening, I would reiterate that my point that as a candidate hoping to be elected, that one of the top things on my list is having an excellent close working relationship with local community organisations, including community councils. And I think part of the problem that there has been for some is that some elected representatives have not taken that tremendously serious. So that's something that's in my immediate power, and it's something that I'm immediately committed to remedy.